Lewis, call. Dude. We all heard it, Lewis. Can't deny it. Whoever denies it supplied it. Isn't that the way it goes? I don't know. I'm not even sure if that's the actual line. And we're live for episode 643. I think this is year 19. I don't know. I don't even know.
I thought you were trying to remember the year.
The year of our Lord.
What year it is.
No, I'm practically there.
When you started with 19, I was concerned.
It's been a rough week and and a long week. And I didn't get very much sleep last night. Whoever smelt it dealt it. Thank you, Gurn. But there's others. Whoever denies it, denies it supplies it. Is that the way it goes? I'm surprised Lewis doesn't know all these. Like Lewis,
I only know the smelted dealt it one.
You seem like the type of person that would know all of these. There was a guy. I think he's still with us. There was a guy in our chat. He was also in the very exclusive halls of the Cult Club, and his username was Mel My Finger. I don't know why that makes me laugh. It kind of seems like your alter ego, Lewis.
His name is Mel.
Mel My Finger, yeah.
Does he have a brother named Abdul?
Wait, what?
Abdul My Finger.
Abdul My Finger?
Abdul, Paul.
Oh, got it.
I can't think of it. Paul My Finger.
Paul
There
My
you go.
Finger.
Paul My Finger.
No, but that's another great one. That's actually pretty good. That's a keeper, man. You got to trademark that one. This is why people leave the show in droves as soon as they start watching. It's all our fault.
Why would you stay?
We're supposed to be talking about Apple, and they were coming up with juvenile and ridiculous website usernames. Okay. Well, everyone, I'm not even sure where we're supposed to be right now. Okay, the recordings are going. Hey, is your recording going, Lewis?
Excuse me.
Is your
course,
recording
yeah.
even going?
Yeah, that's why we clapped
All
so
right.
long ago.
All right. Oh man, look at this. The chat is booming. Shout out to Hugo Last. Oh man, he says sorry. He had a super chat for 20 big smackers. I really got to readjust this revenue stream here so that this is going into my pocket. These are all going straight to LK. This is a problem. He says sorry I missed last week during the eclipse. I was suntanning in the nude with LK and Mrs. D. Oh my. Right in the middle, I guess. That's quite a trio.
Power
out there.
trio.
Quite a trio out there in the sun. Hugo, I'm truly envious of you. But actually, no, I'm not. I wouldn't mind Mrs. D, but LK? No. That's going to be a no. Going to be a no from me, dog. Greetings from Montenegro. Wow. Montenegro. I'm not even sure. Isn't that like one of those rich countries next to Luxembourg or something? Are you in the banking industry, perhaps, hyperactive? Let me know. Maybe we can make a deal of some kind.
In the Balkans.
Is it? Okay. We got Corey B. We got Darth Inkling. We got Torque Quill DeWall. We got Fack here. There's too many. I can't read these all. And we got Anth, of course. No, I'm terribly wrong about that. My apologies. All right. I got to be walking these sweet buns out the door in 1 hour. And we got a lot to talk about this week. So I'm going to go ahead and queue up Mrs. You-Know-Who, and I think we'll get this thing rolling. I feel like we're forgetting something, but at this point, it's too late to course correct.
Did you tweet the tweet?
Sure.
Oh, hey-o! Thank you. See, I knew I was forgetting something. Cover your ears. I should try to do that louder. The tweet's been tweeted, Lewis.
X is just never going to catch on. Like the term X. Calling
Did
it
you
an
X
X
the
is
X?
I know. It's so dumb, man. It's like these people really need to consider these name changes just across the board. When people change the name of a popular product to something else, I just feel like it rarely works as well. Like Twitter is just perfect. The tweet, right? Like just all the vernacular associated with that platform, and changing it to X, I don't love it.
Yeah,
It's
what
funny
kind of
because
guy do
I
they have
never
in
liked
charge up there?
Well, he knows what
a
he's doing.
genius.
But when it comes to the actual rebranding, yeah, not so much. HBO Max, oh dude. Well, now it's just Max. Now it's just Max. That
Ugh.
was one of the worst rebrands of all time. One of the most insane branding changes I have ever had in my lifetime. I mean, dude, HBO is ubiquitous. Everybody knows what it is, and it has such huge brand loyalty. And to change that to Max, yeah, I don't know. Horrendous body odor. Don't you dare talk about Lewis that way. It's also not true. He smells.
It's
Fresh,
literally
I'm
equivalent.
freshly laundered.
It's equivalent to if Disney Plus renamed it to just be Plus and dropped the Disney.
That's right in line with what they did. That's true. We're just Plus now. All right. Let's go ahead and cue up Mrs. You Know Who. Oh, Mrs. D. Oh, Mrs. D. I heard you were suntanning recently with one of our CultCast members. Oh, yes, my dear. It was very erotic. Oh, God, gross. I'm going to stop you right there, Mrs. D. I don't want to hear any more about that situation. You don't want to hear about my one piece? Just the bottoms. Oh! Keeps going. Broke out just the bottoms. That's only for special occasions, I hear. Mrs. D, we're all nauseous, and none of us want to hear any more about that. If you don't mind, we have a lot of Apple news to talk about. Look at Lewis. He looks like he's about to hurl. Look at his face. Look at that sour Biden-esque look he's got on his face. You getting all squinty, Lewis? Where are you going? Stage is that way.
Best I can do.
That's pretty good, actually. All right. All jokes aside, this is a serious production. You all know that. Let's get this music going, and we'll get this show rolling in 3, 2. Hello, and welcome to CultCast, the best 30-plus minute Apple conversation you're going to hear all week long. I'm your host, Airphone Elijah. Joining me today, after years of entangling the feet of escaping Cultimac writers, he's become one of the United States' foremost experts on the throwing of bolas, and is considering developing his own line for sale in the U.S. marketplace. He's the manager and editor of CultCast. Lewis Wallace is here.
Gotta be a big hit.
Yeah, literally. Also with us, he's training his dogs to recognize the scent of Lewis Wallace in the event he shows up on the premises unexpectedly. And he and Mrs. Jones have to escape through the emergency hatch in their bedroom floor. He's a writer called Mac. Griffin Jones is here.
To avoid the notorious shoe lassos, I've also developed a series of shoes that I could wear inside of other shoes. So he thinks he's got me, and I just slip right out and keep running.
Man, you are good. You are. That's why. Go ahead, Lewis.
Like one of those lizards with the tail that pops off.
Mm-hmm.
Just when you think you have got him, his feet are entangled with the bolas, and he just slips out of his shoes. He's still got shoes on. That's the impressive part. It's like you'd think he'd have to run through with his bare feet through the woods, but nope, he's got other shoes. That's why he's still on the loose, Lewis. You gotta get a hold of your game, man. I don't know what's going on over there, but look at how happy he looks and look how free. It's unacceptable. All right, we got a lot of stuff to talk about this episode. It looked like a terrible hellscape of boring Apple news, but we put together quite a nice little show for you guys. So the first legitimate third-party app store has gone live in the EU. We'll tell you all about that. There's some interesting tidbits in there. We also have a all-in-one retro game emulator, I can barely say that, now out for iPhone, which is wild, which means you'll be able to play some of those old-school console games that we all know and love, but on your iPhone. We're going to talk about some of the features coming to iPhone 16 for the camera, and I have been thinking a lot about camera features for iPhone 16. And am I on me? Who am I on? Okay, good. For a second, I thought I had the wrong camera angle. And there are two features in particular that the iPhone needs to bring to their cameras that would make it one of the greatest cameras in the game, because it's got two huge flaws right now, in my opinion, as somewhat of a camera expert. Let's see, what else do we got? That might be it. Oh, no, that's right. We're going to talk about some essential Mac settings that you need to change. And we're going to wrap up with a conversation on some of the best new and renewed shows coming to Apple TV Plus, including one that I am extremely excited about, which probably is my favorite. Well, I was going to say my favorite show on streaming right now, but I'm also watching Fallout on Amazon Prime, which we probably won't get into this episode, but I think maybe when you're done with it, Griffin, maybe we could do a conversation about it. I don't know if it should be spoiler or spoiler-free. I tend to lean towards spoiler-free. But that's an interesting show, and it's one of the greatest video game franchises of all time. But so far, they haven't completely screwed it up, which I'm happy to say. They have screwed up some things, but, no one's perfect. Yeah, on Off Topic. We might do an all-new Off Topic. Plus, we're going to be releasing an all-new Off Topic. By the time you hear this, it's probably going to be out. Of our thoughts and opinions on the state of theme parks, including Disney, which we got into towards the end of the episode. And we got other off topics planned too. So that will appear in your regular CultCast feed in your podcast app. And it's going to be ad-free and free for all, thanks to all of our supporters at support.thecultcast.com. Come and fork it over. We need your $5. Don't be a cheapskate. Because if I find you and I find out that you haven't forked it over, we're going to have a problem. A big problem, Lewis. A big problem. This should be some stiff fingers in your shoulders type of problem. Okay, look. Before we dive in, let me go ahead and say thank you to... Oh, why did I not load this? Maybe I can do it before they notice. Oh, no. Am I saying this out loud? I am, aren't I? Okay, thanks to Squarespace for supporting this episode. Squarespace has been a longtime sponsor of the CultCast, which we appreciate. And I use Squarespace because it's so easy to use. And to build a website, you can... Oh, hold on a second. This is not working. Oh, there we go. They've got this new technology they called Fluid Engine, which is their next generation website editor, which makes it extremely easy to build your website. You just choose what kind of website you want to build. They have all these different templates, and then you can customize absolutely every detail with their drag and drop technology, and your website will look great for mobile. I feel like I've become Brick from Anchorman. It will look great on desktop or mobile. They also have this thing called Squarespace Blueprint AI and SEO tools, which will help you create generative AI copy for your website if you need it. And also, they have all the SEO tools that you need built in so that your website will appear in search, which is obviously pretty important. They also have flexible payments built in, which is a new thing that is obviously very hot because it gives people the ability to accept credit cards, namely you, PayPal, Apple Pay, and there are other payment options that they can use like buy now and pay later, Afterpay, and ClearPay, depending on what country you're in. So just tons of options. And that's why I use it. Like they just keep it state of the art. And it's so easy to build and maintain. It looks beautiful. And you just never have to mess with it. Once you have it up and running, it just works, which is one of the things that I love about it. If you still haven't tried it, head to squarespace.com/CultCast to get started. And you will be able to sign up for their free trial and build a website, see how you like it. And if you want to continue your service after the trial is over, you can use code CultCast at checkout to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain at squarespace.com/CultCast. And then again, the offer code to use is CultCast at checkout when you're ready to make a purchase, that is. All right, let's dive right in. First story of the day. I have absolutely no idea what it is. I'm completely lost already. Oh, first third-party App Store goes live in the EU. Man, I am hoping and praying that this comes to the U.S. I don't know if it ever will, although I think if you read the tea leaves, put your finger in the air, test the momentum, I think that we are heading in this direction too. There's just way too much criticism of Apple keeping everything locked down and locked in. And now that the EU has forced Apple to allow third-party app stores, I think that this is coming for us as well. So the story goes like this. The first third-party app marketplace called AltStore PAL launched in Europe on Wednesday. The App Store alternative comes from someone named Riley Testut, the developer who got his Delta retro game emulator into the iPhone App Store on the same day. Oh, dude, I didn't realize that. So it's the same person.
Mhm.
AltStore PAL arrives thanks to the recent legislation and tweaks in iOS 17.4, which made third-party app marketplaces possible. Apple, of course, made these changes begrudgingly thanks to these new regulations in the EU's Digital Markets Act, which opens up the iPhone to all sorts of stuff, iOS, and not just third-party app stores, but third-party payment systems and so on. For users in the EU, the AltStore PAL cost €150 plus VAT fees per year. Oh, so the users have to pay for the store. Okay,
Mhm.
I thought this was only sellers, so that's interesting. That's kind of an interesting play. For developers, distributing apps in the AltStore PAL is free. They can choose to use its Patreon integration to distribute directly to patrons, and unlike the App Store, the platform includes no review process. Wow. Okay, so some new details. This is kind of an oddball model. So they charge users, but not sellers. And there's absolutely no review process for the App Store. Wow. That is quite a departure from the current App Store. So it is the Wild West. Let's see here. Patreon also lets developers limit their number of users below 1 million so they can avoid paying the core technology fee, which was what, like 50 cents or something?
50
Right
cents per user per install.
Okay. Right now, it only includes 2 apps, the Delta Emulator and Clip, a clipboard manager. According to Test It Once, we're sure everything is running smoothly. We'll open the doors to other third-party apps. So if you'd like to distribute your app with AltStore, please get in touch. Whoa, wowee. This is a major departure from our current one app store owned and operated by Apple. Any thoughts on this, Griffin?
Yeah, I think the fact that they've integrated with Patreon is like genuinely a pretty awesome and clever way to monetize it.
Yeah.
Because again, like the fact that there's no developer fee associated with it is like, all right, well, if you make an app and you get rejected by Apple, finally you have at least a plan B, somewhere else you can go.
That's right.
And it doesn't cost you an inordinate amount of money. I think it's really smart, and I think he's really thought it through. Like, it also offloads a lot of the cost so that, their business doesn't get run aground by a bunch of inordinate fees if, an app on their store goes viral or something like that. Like charging the users up front, I think it's very different. Like it's a different set of rules, and I think it will, take some people getting used to, because we've only known the rules of one app store for the last 16 years, but it opens up a whole world of new possibilities.
A whole new. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, it is very clever how they structured their revenue model. They incentivized developers to just try it because it's going to cost them absolutely nothing, and there is a revenue source built in with Patreon. Although I don't really know how motivated users are going to be to support developers on Patreon. That is kind of an uphill climb for many people who use Patreon. But it's a great model for the developer because he's taking like that Costco model where he just takes a membership fee, and he's hoping like 1 million people will start using the App Store. And if they do, he's going to be making all sorts of money. And so it's kind of a low barrier for users and a low barrier for sellers. Although I think it's going to be kind of a challenge with not sellers, but developers, because now you're putting app stores or an app in their store, but you can't charge for it, and you have to collect revenue from Patreon. Like that's kind of an odd thing for people to get behind, I think.
I believe you can still have charged apps on AltStore.
You can. Okay, so they can do both things. Okay, well then that makes more sense. And dude, this is my problem with the Apple App Store, to be a broken record, has always been that Apple completely controls it and doesn't allow other app stores. So phones and apps have become the gateway to the internet, and now Apple gets to control that gateway. I think that's a problem. So if Apple doesn't like your, 55, farts that will amaze you app, and they ban it, now you just basically can't put it on anyone's phone. I think that's a major problem. Apple should not have that much power. So I'm happy to see that something like this exists. And if you don't want to use it, then you don't have to use it, obviously. You could stick with the App Store, which I think is probably what most people will do. But I love that this is an option. The fact that apps go completely unreviewed, I mean, that's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of fraud and all sorts of apps that are just trying to take advantage of people and swindle them out of money. But, you know, I guess that's what you pay for. When you have an
we'll
app
see
store
how it
that's
goes.
Wild West. Yeah, totally.
Riley Testa can change the rules on a dime. It's his app store. He can do what he wants with it. If he doesn't like an app on it, he can just pull it, just like Apple.
I mean, that is true. Caveat emptor, I guess, right? Like if there's a review system in place and a bunch of people start complaining that an app is defrauding people, then he's essentially crowdsourcing his regulation of apps to the community. And as long as an app isn't acting in nefarious ways, it can stay. Otherwise, he can just yank it. Because otherwise, like, there's no way this dude is going to be able to review all the different apps that come through the pipeline. Imagine how much money Apple spends on reviewing apps. Like the technical team that has to understand programming and code and all the different apps that come in that do all these different things and access all these APIs. I mean, it's bonkers. They must be spending
It's no surprise
a ton
they
of
do
money.
kind of a terrible job with app review.
Well, I think it's very difficult to do it well because everyone's always looking for an edge. Everyone's always trying to figure out how they can game the system, gain an advantage. And so there's probably a ton of subjectivity that kind of goes into the process because, you know, it's just like the law. You know, they're not always easy to understand, and there's interpretation that goes into it, which is why lawyers exist. Anyway, so if you're in Europe, you have access to an all-new app store. And for any of our European listeners, of which I know there are many, if you try it out, ping me and let me know what you think. I'd be curious to hear like what your experience is using it and what it's like compared to like the Apple App Store and like the kinds of apps that live there versus, you know, the kinds of apps that you see in like the Apple App Store. I'd be curious to hear like what your experience is. All right, let's move on. Because we don't have a ton of time.
I got a question.
Yeah? Okay, I guess we got time for one question.
Does anybody know what the name means? PAL?
Yeah, it's a reference to the TV standard in Europe as opposed to NTSC, which is in the United States. PAL is the European standard. It's kind of a nerdy reference.
I also knew that, Lewis. I also knew that.
I thought maybe it stood for Phony App Library or something.
Well, that might be the secret meaning of the analogy or the acronym.
All right, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to distract you from the important news we have to go. I just couldn't figure out what that name was.
Lewis, you know that this show's a finely oiled machine. And
I know.
we can't break for tangents. So we got to keep moving on because this is kind of related. From the same
Zero
developer.
tangents.
Not this show. We got 45 minutes left for me to be walking right out the door. So from the same guy who brought you the AltStore PAL is one of the biggest stories of the week. And this is a game emulator that somehow got into our own Apple App Store, which I haven't read a ton about the story, but I did see a lot of news about it, Griffin. So what's going on with this?
Yeah, so if you're thinking to yourself, oh, who cares about alternate app stores? I live in the United States. This means nothing to me. Well, this piece of news is pretty directly related to that. The Delta Retro Game Emulator is now in the iPhone App Store across the world for everybody. Not only can it handle ROMs originally for the classic Game Boy handheld console, but also emulates NES, SNES, Nintendo 64, and Nintendo DS games.
Wow.
So for many years, Apple prohibited developers from listing retro game emulators for download on the iPhone App Store, and it actively took down any of them that slipped through its review process. But in early April, Apple updated the App Store guidelines to suddenly allow this type of software. It's almost as if the threat of competition led to a change in the rules.
I doubt that very
so
much.
that they would curb the need for people to install an app marketplace in the first place. Interesting. Anyways, Delta is ready to download on the App Store now. It runs on iPhone and iPad. It's free. It has no advertising and doesn't track users in any way. It even supports external game controllers, so you don't have to use the on-screen buttons. You know, I don't know if you know this but on an iPhone, you can pair like a PlayStation or Xbox controller to your phone, or a Nintendo Switch controller, like pretty much whatever you have handy if it's a first-party controller. And they all work inside Delta as well. The app also supports opening ROMs that you can just save into iCloud Drive. there's there's an official like hardware accessory you can use where you can like plug in a game cartridge into it and then plug that into your iPhone, and it basically appears as like a thumb drive.
Oh,
So you
wow.
can copy your old game cartridges, or you can just find them on the internet. But I don't. That's obviously illegal, so you shouldn't do that. Um, as a side
I
note, like
disavow.
even though like retro game emulators were allowed by App Store rules, there were like a lot of questions about copyright before any of them really appeared on the store. So even though Apple's official position is that the developer is responsible to make sure their app is compliant and that Apple won't play, the judge in this case, App Review has rejected apps for all kinds of asinine reasons over copyright, like Casey Liss, who makes the app Call Sheet, which is basically like an open source, or not necessarily open source. It's like a nicer version of the IMDb app. His app was rejected from App Review because in the promotional art that he used, like the screenshots, he included there were like movie posters on the screen. And so it
Wow.
was rejected for App Review. Yeah. So like all kinds of ridiculous things like that. And the rules are enforced really inconsistently. Secondly, you can't submit an app to App Review that doesn't do anything out of the box. That's a long-standing rule for other reasons, but like, every app has to do something when you first install it. So that means, like, so a lot of people were concerned. Does that mean that you can't submit an emulator that doesn't come with any games in it because you need to have a game ROM for it to do anything?
They'll
And
probably,
also,
if that's true, they'll probably include some terrible, just basic game that they made themselves, like Pong or
yeah.
something.
And another interesting point is what's defined as a retro game console? Apple doesn't clarify this in the rules. So Delta goes all the way up to the Nintendo DS as the most recent console, but like, is the Wii a retro console? Is the Wii U a retro game console? Is the Switch a retro game console? Because it was first introduced like 8 years ago. The line isn't really clear there.
Right.
And what I really want to know is, would Apple approve a retro game console to the App Store that emulates the Apple Pippin, their game console from the 1990s? They say they're going to be all hands off about copyright and intellectual property, but well, let's see how they.
Oh, dude, I
How,
doubt they would care. I mean, the Pippin is so long and dead. Like, no one even knows what it is, first of all, except for like nerds like us. Other than that, no one's heard of the Pippin. I don't even know how many games ever even came out for the Pippin. I'm going to guess like under 50, like not even that. So I bet you they wouldn't care. But
yeah, we'll see though. You know what? I'm going to put it up an open bet. If you submit an Apple Pippin emulator to the App Store, I will give you $20.
hey, be careful, man. I lost $5 to Lewis. It's easy to do. Don't get cocky, kid. Yeah, well,
Anyways,
Cash is so simple.
yeah. So I think what would happen is either they would continue adding support for different consoles to something like this. Like if you just released a Pippin emulator and called it, Pip Play or something, then maybe. But if you don't make it obvious and you don't rub it in their face and you include a bunch of other support for consoles that are also old, I bet you they'll let it slide, man. And there's so many consoles out there. And emulators are a big deal. Like, people love playing emulators because there's a lot of games that you just can't play otherwise. I mean, Nintendo's the only one that really monetizes their back catalog super well. A lot of other consoles just will like give you access to those games for free as part of like some kind of subscription or something. But Nintendo actively sells their old games. But being able to play games from all these different consoles on your iPad, like when you're on a flight or something, like that would be really cool. And it would finally, I think, be something that really takes advantage of the more powerful hardware in the iPads. I don't know how much power you need to run games from a Nintendo DS, but like games from a Wii or a Wii U, you might need some actual horsepower to run those kinds of games. So that'd be pretty cool to have something like this. In fact, I'm going to download this. I'm going to download this on my iPad. Although you said, what do you have to do? Maybe we should talk about this offline to get games onto it.
You just have to acquire a ROM from one of those unscrupulous websites on the internet. Although I should mention, there is no iPad version. The iPad version is the iPhone running in like the crappy scaling mode.
But that's fine with me. You know what we should do, Griffin? We should relocate this conversation to the halls of the Cult Club, where we could talk about this in detail without prying eyes, on us.
Sounds good.
Which, of course, you can access by going to support.thecultcast.com if you want to be a part of these very exclusive conversations. But
Or if you want to continue the dubious legality in that theme, you can go to cultof9to5macrumors.com.
that should be the name of another podcast that we do called Dubious Legality. That's a great name. Also good on a shirt. All right. Anything else to say about this, Griffin?
Not really. I mean, I think it's a classic example about how regulation can actually be used to foster competition, and how the DMA is helping everybody.
I can hardly believe where we're at. By the way, Lewis, I'm moving my story before yours because I feel like
Go ahead. Button line. What do I care?
These camera features are going to be a good preamble to the one that you're going to talk about. But yeah, I can hardly believe what's going on with this alternate app store, like this legit ultimate app store or alternate app store, alternate payment systems. Like there's all this stuff that I just never would have imagined that Apple would have ever allowed. And here we are. It's pretty incredible. Although we don't have it in the US from an alternate app store perspective, but that's going to be the next big thing. I think that's going to have to happen at some point. Apple's going to try and prevent it by throwing us a few nuggets, a few crumbs here and there, but I think there's too much momentum to stop it now. Let's see here. Okay. We need to talk about iPhone 16 and the upcoming camera features. I have to apologize. I'm going to reference a website which we try not to name on this show because we have high journalistic standards, but look, they had a good summary, so I'm going to bring them into the loop. We'll toss them. We'll toss them some views. They're struggling on views. I know that they're a small website, but we'll help them out. But before we do that, I also want to thank real quick, which I also didn't have them up. I want to thank Notion for supporting this episode. Oh my goodness, I'm off my game today, or maybe this is actually what my game normally looks like. I want to thank. I can't decide. I want to thank Notion for supporting this episode. Notion is a place where any team can write, plan, organize, and rediscover the joy of play. And also, it's just a dang good note-taking app with a ton of features that make it like a turbocharged version of Apple Notes and way more useful. Notion combines your notes and docs in one space that's simple, beautifully designed, with the power of AI built right inside, not a separate AI tool or browser tab. And it's cross-platform. I love cross-platform apps. It's one of the reasons why I love Telegram, which is a messaging app. It's like, dude, not only is it a great messaging app, but it works cross-platform. They have an app for the different platforms that you might actually use. And so does Notion, which I love because I can't always be on my Mac. And I hate typing on my phone. So, of course, they have a Mac and an iPhone app and a Windows app. And you can do so many things within Notion. You can summarize meeting notes. You can automatically generate action items. You can get answers to your questions in seconds based upon a wiki that you have started. If you can think about it, you can make it in Notion. And it's a great tool to get organized. You can build project tracking systems. You can use Kanban boards. There's just so much stuff that you can do to track your project and create material for your project. I won't do it now, but we played a CultCast demo that Notion created for us a while back. We were just testing it, and it was terrific. It was even better than, like, no joke, it was better than the copy that we had received from a real human. And it knew things about us. It knew details about our show. Like, it understood the tone of our show, and it created some copy for us in 5 seconds that we could use for promotional materials online. So if you have been looking for a Notes app that does way more than Apple's Notes app does, which will help you create content, which will make it easy to track different projects and stay in sync with your team on different projects that you're working on, definitely check out Notion. A lot of people are using it now. There's a lot of YouTubers who have been transitioning into it to manage their channels and stuff. And I'm only scratching the surface here. Try Notion for free when you go to notion.com/cultcast. That's all lowercase letters, notion.com/cultcast. and start turning your ideas into action. And when you use our link, of course, you're supporting the show, which helps us out, notion.com/CultCast. Okay, let's talk about iPhone 16 camera features and the two big ones that it needs, which I don't know if these will land on iPhone 16, but it would make the iPhone almost the perfect camera, which it's already such an outstanding camera. But there are some things that it definitely lacks. So here we go. I warned you. We're on 9 to 5 Mac. They had an iPhone 16 Pro camera features roundup that I was like, okay, I'll give them some love. This is good. Good job, 9 to 5 Mac. You finally scored a win here. And they were talking about their expectations for iPhone 16 Pro and iPhone 16 Pro Max. So first of all, what can we expect? Upgraded ultra-wide camera. According to multiple reports, the 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max will both get an upgraded 48-megapixel ultra-wide camera this year, which will be a significant improvement over the current 12-megapixel ultra-wide camera in the 15 Pro. Of course, that's going to be a huge difference and will mean extra fidelity in your images. Let's see here. This change should mean that the iPhone 16 Pro's wide camera is much better in most shooting situations, but particularly in low light environments. Images will also appear to have more detail, improved color, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, so better, easier post-production options and that type of thing. Anything else here? Oh, the iPhone 16 Pro's 48-megapixel ultra-wide camera might also mean major improvements for spatial video for those of you who still have the Vision Pro, like Griffin. Let me see. Expanded optical zoom. Currently, the 15 Pro Max uses a tetraprism camera design that unlocks 5x optical zoom. But with the 16 lineup, Apple will expand the tetraprism to the iPhone 16 Pro as well. We kind of all expected that, which means that the iPhone 16 Pro and the 15 Pro Max will both offer at least 5x optical zoom, which might mean for me I go back to the regular phone. I don't know about you, Lewis, but I'm on the fence. I love my Macs, but I also love having a smaller phone. Let's see here. There is I'm going to leave the anti-reflective coating to you here, Lewis. We are also getting an upgraded main camera because that's going to be part of your story, right? I'm presuming.
Part of?
Yeah. Or the central
The
focus
entirety.
of. Okay. Well, I'll save that one for you. Upgraded main camera. The iPhone 16 Pro will reportedly use a new main camera from Sony. This is actually a big one. With an upgraded design for better low-light performance. Sony's latest stack sensor tech separates out the photodiodes and the pixel transistors, which are normally combined in a single layer. This allows the photodiodes themselves, the bit which actually capture the light, to be significantly larger for the same overall pixel size. Sony claims that the sensor captures twice as much light compared to existing camera sensors, which, one of the reasons that people love full-frame cameras is because their photo sites are large, which makes them more sensitive to light, which means lower noise in lower light situations. So this could mean a significant reduction in noise and better performance in low light scenarios. We'll have to wait and see how this actually pans out because small sensors like the iPhone generally don't do well in low light scenarios. But dude, so the other night I was on a walk and I was using my iPhone back-facing camera and I was just testing it out because I'm going on a little trip in September back to Disneyland with a few of my buddies. And I want to be able to film some of the rides. And so I've been doing some tests with my iPhone, and I was actually blown away at how good the back-facing camera, the main camera, is at recording low-light scenarios. It is so good. And the exposure it's able to deliver in low-light scenarios is so much better than it used to be. And the noise is very low. I mean, the iPhone is really turning into an outstanding low light camera, but the front facing camera is still a horrific turd. It is so bad in low lights. Like, just go out into any dark room or outside, try the main camera in low light, and then switch to the front facing camera before you hit record, obviously, because that technology is too advanced to exist on an iPhone to switch cameras while, recording. If only such a technology existed. And you'll see the stark difference. I mean, the front-facing camera is so bad in low light scenarios. I don't know why. And this is one of the things I don't like about iPhone is how much disparity there are between the different cameras and how they'll like sprinkle out an advanced feature just one of the cameras, like not even all the cameras on the back, just one of them, like the main camera. And then a year later, you might get it on the wide angle camera. I hate that they do that.
You know, this is why I'm so excited as someone who's going to be upgrading to the iPhone 16 Pro this fall, because as you said, they've been making huge advancements on the main 1x lens. And although they've like added like tweaks to the, the magnification of the telephoto lens, the actual sensor of the telephoto lens and the ultra wide lens have remained the exact same sensor since the iPhone 13. So
I did not realize that. So this is
so
a huge advancement.
I'm looking forward to like the big leaps that all three of the rear cameras are going to be getting this year. Wow. And I think the reason the front-facing camera lags so far behind is because it's much more space constrained than the rear-facing cameras. Like you've seen how much larger the rear camera has gotten over the years, whereas the opening for the front-facing camera has gotten smaller.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So maybe they are technically constrained by how much space they have available. Although, look, if they got to put a camera hump on the front of the camera, I might be okay with that. You thought the notch was bad.
God.
Now the notch is going to like protrude like a half inch out from the phone, you know? It's going to be called the capsule. The camera capsule. Yeah, well, there are two things that I need in a small portable camera to make it a full frame camera killer. So like with full frame cameras, like my Sony ZV-E1, for instance, I keep it around because it is absolutely outstanding in low light. That thing is like one of the most advanced pieces of optical equipment in low light that I've ever experienced. Man, it sees in like virtual pitch black conditions and will still expose color very well, and the image still looks beautiful. That's something that the iPhone is getting to be much better at. And it doesn't need to be as good as the Sony full-frame camera, obviously, but it needs to be good enough that you can use it in dark scenarios with all the different cameras, like on a ride in Disneyland, and still be able to expose and not have, really dark areas where you can't see anything and then like noise and stuff. And the other big thing, and the iPhone is it's already so good at this, is stability, like image stability. So when you're moving around, like, is there shakiness? Like the iPhone does better than almost any camera on the market. I've tested so many cameras. Like there's probably a couple that are better than the iPhone. Like the GoPro series of cameras are like mythical levels of image stabilization. And then the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 that they just released is also incredible, but it has like the camera on a gimbal. Now, the problem with the iPhone and with many fixed lens cameras, even if they're good with image stabilization, it completely falls apart in low light scenarios. So you can't get both. You either get good image stabilization in bright situations or low light situations, and it just completely falls apart. I didn't explain that very well, actually, but that's usually the way it works. So what the iPhone needs to do is it needs to have great low light performance and great image stabilization together. And if you can figure out how to do that, you have just made one of the best everyday carry cameras that exists, because those are two things that everybody, even if they don't know that they need it, they absolutely need it. And the iPhone is good at, this is what I was trying to say. The iPhone is either good at one or the other, but not both at the same time. And it also needs work on the low light performance. So I'm hoping that we get some of that action coming to the iPhone 16.
You know what also would be great? If it had fewer lens flares.
I don't mind the
right,
lens flares, and J.J. Abrams would argue that those are the secret to his success. But I know Lewis goes into a rage when he sees a lens flare. His face starts twitching. His lip curls like I can't remember that singer's name. Billy Idol.
Oh, jeez. White
It's
Wedding, yeah.
Yeah. Right, Lewis?
Oh, God. Yeah, I guess, okay. So, yeah, we're all very excited because Apple could finally fix the iPhone's long-standing camera flare problem. This was the fourth element of that roundup that you were talking about, right? But we did our own little post on this. Apple could finally eliminate lens flare, a longtime problem with the iPhone camera, with a new lens coating technology on the iPhone 16 Pro. This rumor originates from China, comes from a leaker known as at YEUX112, apparently a robot.
Sounds like a Sony product name.
Yeah, jeez. This person says Apple is testing new atomic layer deposition, aka ALD, equipment for a special coating that will help reduce lens flares. Company apparently will only use the coating on the iPhone 16 Pro models because, of course, if you're not a pro, you don't deserve to have those lens flares. Plus, and it might cost an extra 2 or 3 cents to spray that on the lens, right? So you can't be having that. Anyway, over the years, Apple has used various coatings to improve glass lenses to enhance light transmission and reduce flares. But despite the company's best efforts, the problem remains, mainly prevalent while recording videos. This new ALD coating might help Apple reduce flaring to a large extent. If it doesn't fix it entirely, coating also might help improve light transmission. That sounds like you'd like that.
I'm a huge fan of light and transmitting.
Yeah, let's see. Could be one of the mini camera. Okay, that's kind of a pitch back to what you're talking about. Previous leak indicates camera's module could get radical redesign. Blah blah blah. Big changes. This is such a big selling point for the iPhone. Last night I was taking pictures and I've actually started noticing this a lot. Like people in the darts league, different people have different phones, right? And you take a picture, they take a picture. Like wow, my picture looks a lot better than yours. And we both did exactly the same thing. We pointed a phone at some people. And this, for instance, was taking pictures of people in front of lit up dartboards, right? So it's totally backlit. I'm like, oh, this is going to be terrible. And of course, unfortunately, it wasn't a selfie because I was taking pictures of the winners. It took, it pulled it out, like there they are. It's exactly what we're talking about. Low light performance and the worst kind, backlit low light performance. And it pulled out their faces. It looked great. So I love having the phone. And, I do think I'm going to go to the regular Pro next time, unless they do.
I think I might too.
They just have to come up with something amazing today, because I lugging this thing around for so long. I don't know, man. The Pro Max is just a little too unwieldy. If I was like a 6'5" Navy SEAL type, maybe it'd be no problem. But unfortunately, I'm not.
Well, there's also the extra price. It's like the Max is a lot more expensive. Sorry, Griffin, go for it.
I was just going to say that I had my first encounter with like a iPhone 16 Pro when I went to the Apple Store last weekend, and man, it is a very nice phone to hold in the hand. It's I was worried that I was especially worried when the rumors were coming out that the iPhone 16 is going to be slightly larger than the. Oh, sorry, did I say iPhone 16 before?
I think you did. What a leak! They got them at the Apple Store.
Wow, and they gave the scoop to Griffin. No way, you're
in Ohio, of all places.
Yeah. Sorry, I held an iPhone 15 Pro. And at first I was worried that rumors of the iPhone 16 Pro is going to get even bigger than the regular phone is. And I already think it's a little too big, but man, it's very comfortable holding the hand. The way that they only slightly increase the rounding radius, it makes a huge difference. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. This is the first Max that I have found to be comfortable to carry and actually use on a daily basis, because the previous Maxes were just way too big and I didn't like living with them on, just in everyday life. But this Max, I barely even notice how big it is anymore. I have to carry it in my back pocket instead of my front pocket. I mean, there is that, because it doesn't fit in my front pocket. But I do love having the bigger screen, and the weight is lower than it used to be. So it's definitely a very livable phone now. And they're going to be making the screen even bigger going forward. So we'll see. But there will be less incentive to get the bigger phone now that they're going to have the Tetra Prism on both phones, because that was one of the other reasons why I wanted to go with the Max. Actually, if I recall correctly, I think I let the people who follow me on X decide. I think I put up a post that said, if this post gets 200 likes, I'll buy the iPhone 15 Pro Max, thinking that no one was going to care. And I forget how many it got, but I think it was almost 300 or 400 likes. And so I was like
18 times.
I was like, oh crap! I'm gonna have to buy this thing now.
Tim Cook voted 56 times.
Yeah, he was in there. I saw.
He really wants that extra $200.
Yeah, I was like
Was
chairman.
it 200 or 100? I can't even remember now.
It was 200. I remember.
So,
It was a lot.
can I ask,
You remember?
do you like the extra zoom power? Do you like having the 5x lens?
Yeah. It
I
comes
don't.
in handy.
I actually don't find that I use it that often. And actually, I think that there are some scenarios where having a shorter zoom range is actually better because it has. I'm trying to remember how exactly the lenses are set up. There's a 1x, I think there's a 2x, and then there's a 5x, I think, on the Max.
You can do a smooth sensor crop anywhere between 1x and 2x, but then the 5x is a discrete lens.
Yeah, but what are the actual zoom ranges for the length for each individual lens? Like, isn't it like
It's 1x, 2, and 5.
Okay, and I think the
0.5.
iPhone. Okay, and the iPhone 15 Pro is 1, 2, and 3, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I don't like about the 15 Pro Max is you're using optical zoom between 2x and 5x. And so I think in certain situations, if you're not zooming out all the way to 5, where it clicks into like the actual telephoto lens, your image quality is actually less than the iPhone 15 Pro in a certain range, which is what I don't necessarily love about that zoom range. I feel like going from 2x and then optically zooming all the way out to 5, like you're just doing digital zoom within there, which I still think you have some image degradation within that digital zoom range because I've never seen digital zoom not have image degradation. It always works that way because you're essentially cropping in on the image to quote unquote zoom in. It's like you're not actually zooming, you're just cropping. So I don't necessarily love the 5x. Like I might prefer it to be like 4x because how often am I zooming in at 5x? There's only one situation where I could have used the 5x, Lewis. You may not have even been on the show when this happened. Do you remember when those punks robbed me at that 7-Eleven and stole my iPhone?
Yeah.
And I tried to take a picture of the license plate because I ran around the corner and their car was up there and they were trying to make the churn so that they could make their fast escape. But I couldn't zoom in. And I wasn't close enough to get a picture of the license plate. With that 5x, boom! Their ass was grass and I was a lawnmower, Lewis. Time to pay the piper.
I use this thing all the time, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but you know, I play darts in various pubs, right? You go to these pubs, you've never been there, and they like I don't know what it is, but these places now they'll put like their beer list up, and it'll be like written in this side,
Right.
1-inch letters, 40 feet from you. I mean, I can't read it, so I take a picture of it. Then I zoom, with the zoom lens, and I zoom in to see what it is. Or even some places they don't even have a list. You have to take a picture of tap handles and there's 30 beers on tap. You have no idea what any of them are. So I do like having that zoom lens, and it also is nice when you're taking pictures, on vacation. I find it to be very good. And,
I do use it sometimes.
helpful.
Yeah.
It's another tool in your arsenal, right?
Yeah. I'm not saying I don't like it. I just feel like a smaller zoom range would be more effective for my life. But I will tell you, so I was on a walk the other night, and I saw this big bird flying through the air, and I was like, what is that?
You saw Big Bird.
I saw Big Bird. And I was like, how did Big Bird get in my neighborhood? And I didn't even know that Big Bird can fly. And he's like, do you know how to spell? And he started spelling out words for me, which was cool. So I saw this bird fly by, and I was like, what is that? And like you, I use my camera on my iPhone as a tool many times to like see small print or try to read something that's far away. And it was almost pitch black. This picture was barely illuminated by a street light that was maybe 20 feet away. And I zoom in on this bird with the telephoto lens. I don't know if you can see that. Is it going to zoom?
Oh, it's a smudge. Oh no, wait, look, it's a beautiful owl.
It's a beautiful owl. I took that from I don't even know how many feet away in almost near dark, near blackness. It was like,
wow.
And look how good that photo came out. I mean, that's what I mean. The iPhone's low light capability on the back facing camera is really good now. And to be able to take this photo without any blurriness, like if I zoom in on the owl, I mean, it doesn't look perfect, but you can see it actually looks pretty sharp. Like you can see its facial features and stuff. Like that's incredible, dude. Like for any camera. And there are certain things that the iPhone can do like that no other camera can do. I mean, just no other camera can match the ability to take a sharp, detailed image in low light conditions like this. And then there's the computational HDR, which I think in many lighting scenarios is the most capable camera that you could have in that situation, just period. There are so many situations where you have a mixture of different lighting, lighting levels, right? So there's like a dark area, a mid-level, like a highlight area. And normal cameras are really not very good at doing that. And the iPhone is able to intelligently brighten your face and other features to expose for your face while also keeping the background well exposed. Like that feature is something that almost no other camera has that I've seen. It doesn't always work perfectly, but when it works well, it's better than having a $4,000 or $5,000, dollar DSLR or a mirrorless camera because they can't do that. Once they can, it's going to be a different story. And camera companies are finally getting on board with some of those features, like Fujifilm and Canon are finally starting to try to build in some AI. I mean, who isn't using AI anymore? But Apple's been doing it for a long time, and they're so far ahead that you can confidently take your iPhone into most lighting situations, and you will get a pretty good photo. It may not be the best, but in a lot of situations, it will be, darn good. And in some situations, it will be the best that you can get with any camera. Okay, rant over.
It just reminded me of like taking rolls of film in and getting developed and getting back like just a roll of gray blobs, because nothing came out right, or everything was completely underexposed. Wow, that just was such a bizarre. Or it's amazing what we are able to do right now, like compared to how time consuming and expensive that was. I mean, if you actually took a lot of pictures, the iPhone would pay for itself because you don't have to buy the film, you don't have to pay for the processing. I mean, it's kind of shocking when you really actually think how far we've come with that. And that, I mean, you're absolutely right. All that computational stuff, it's like magic.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been a photographer if I had to stick with film. I don't have the patience for it, man. Like, it was so hard to take pictures back then because you had to actually make adjustments manually to like the aperture, the shutter. You had to know how the ISO was going to affect the image. And then you take the image and then you have to go and look at it later and try to remember what the settings were. Because if the image is too dark, you probably did something wrong. But like, what were your settings? Like, I don't know. You practically needed like an abacus and a protractor to take photos, 20 years ago.
Light meters.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, people still use light meters, but I mean, not
but like
in the consumer space. But they still exist,
Lots of things do.
True.
Yeah,
that is true. Lewis.
Very odd. It's so true. Lots of things still exist.
Lots of things do still exist. Maybe we should do a CultCast off-topic episodes on things that just still exist. It's like toasters, toast, baseballs, tennis balls. I mean, we could do like a whole hour on this, and maybe just not have any conversation. We should just throw them out. Anything that we could think of that has existed and still exists. Think of all the $5 that will be forked over for that episode, Lewis. Think about it.
Jimmy Carter.
He's still around. Dude, that's actually one.
Better record it quickly.
That's one that we can have a discussion around because he's like 90-something, isn't he? Yeah. All right. Look, we got about 10 minutes left before I got to peace out here. So how much stuff do we have left?
I'm going to quickly run through my story really quick.
Yeah, do it
or
real
at least
fast.
give a passing mention of it.
Yep, pass it.
Over
Pass
the
it quick.
weekend, Rajesh and I collaborated on an article that's 5 essential Mac settings you should change. If you've been using the Mac for a long time, which I'm sure is a lot of our audience, you've probably gotten used to the way things are on your computer. But something as simple as changing a setting that you've had set one way for a long time can make your Mac feel completely different. So I have a video that will be linked in the show notes where you can watch my video or you can read Rajesh's article. We actually have some different opinions on a few of those things. So, read both. Check it out. Good stuff.
All right.
That's all.
It has been plugged. Let's move on to the main event now.
The main event.
Oh, Lewis, you're doing this? All right.
Did you want to do it? You can do it. Go ahead.
No. I thought it was Griffin. So I was surprised when I scrolled down and I was like squinting. I said, I think that says Lewis.
Huh.
Yeah. Take
All
it
right.
away,
Yeah.
Lewis.
So this is just a bunch of new stuff that's coming to Apple TV Plus. It's been a kind of a banner week. So there's going to be a new show called Down Cemetery Road. It's going to come. It's from the author of the Slow Horses books, Mick Herron. So if you like slow horses, which I think I know I do. I think
Never
you
saw
like
it.
it too, right? What?
Never saw it.
I thought who was I guess it's Leander that likes it. Anyway, that show is great. Slow Horses is great, and this is another thing based on Mick Herron's writing. The plot is supposedly this. This is what Apple says the plot's going to be. When a house explodes in a quiet Oxford suburb and a girl disappears in the aftermath, neighbor Sarah Tucker becomes obsessed with finding her and enlists the help of private investigator Zoe Bohm. Zoe and Sarah suddenly find themselves in a complex conspiracy that reveals that people long believed dead are still among the living,
Oh,
while
my.
the living are fast joining the dead.
Sounds good, actually.
It does sound good. Let's see. We just want to burn through these, right?
Yeah, why not?
Three-part documentary series coming to
Okay.
Apple TV Plus called Hollywood Con Queen that explores the story of an international con artist impersonating some of Hollywood's most powerful women. This is something I'd never even heard about. I have no idea
Me
what's
either.
going on. The reporting that it's based on, which I think came from the Hollywood Reporter, was supposedly like really interesting. Like one of those weird stories that keeps getting weirder and weirder. Let's see. The other big news. It's a hint. Silo Star
Oh,
drops
boy.
major hint about sci-fi hits future on Apple TV Plus. Rebecca Ferguson, she's the big star of Silo, laid out the show's possible future in an interview. So this is what she said, and this is, read into what you want. Season 2 is shot and coming out, and we're now looking at greenlighting seasons 3 and 4, and I think we would film them maybe together, and that would be the end. So
Interesting.
she made this hilarious comment of like, well, so what I could be doing is like going and filming one scene in the morning for, director A, and in the afternoon I film a different scene from, the next season way down the line, filmed by a completely different director, which just sounds kind of like a mind-boggling
It's like Lord of the
way
Rings.
to go about it.
You know how they
Yeah,
filmed all
very
those
odd.
movies at the same time? That would be so weird. I spent like 18 months just filming them, all the movies, and then they just edit the whole thing afterwards. It's crazy. I am
Well,
excited
you
for this
are
one
a
to
fan
come.
of Silo.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean,
Yes.
the ending of Silo was mind-bending. I was like, no way.
Yeah.
I'm super excited for this. It's just great sci-fi.
Yeah, I can't wait till season 2 of that comes out. And if they do 2 more after that and they're all as good as the first one, that'll be some good watching. Let's see. In the last final bit of news, we should let Griffin say this one because he's a huge fan of this show. I
Really?
can't even begin to touch this one.
You too, huh?
This has been like
Look how excited he
burning
is.
on the inside of me. But when they went all the way through season 4 of For All Mankind without announcing season 5, and then it was just silence for months. But finally, it has been officially renewed for season 5. Apple TV Plus finally revealed out of nowhere just yesterday. But it gets even better. The show's creators will launch a brand new spin-off series called Star City. It's named after the Soviet space program's longtime headquarters outside of Moscow. Quote, Star City is a propulsive, paranoid thriller that takes us back to the key moment in the alternate history retelling of the space race, when the Soviet Union became the first nation to put a man on the moon. But this time, we explore the story from behind the Iron Curtain. So this is exactly the spinoff that I think like a lot of fans of the show have been asking for. It's just been the best news possible.
I couldn't tell if that was sarcasm when you said that Griffin really likes this show.
Look how excited he is.
I don't know. I've rewatched the first 2 seasons like literally 3 times.
Wow.
It's so good. It's legitimately one of my favorite shows on television.
I am truly. I don't understand. Maybe I need to go back and rewatch it. Well, I tried to get myself into this show. I maybe made it 3 episodes in, and I was like, this is one of the most horrendously boring shows I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, what is interesting about this show? Like, nothing happens. And
Season 1 is admittedly a little slower.
a little slow.
Season 2. Okay, well, I also pitched watching 1960s Doctor Who last week. So,
I'd much rather watch
I'm a
Doctor
pretty
Who from
patient viewer.
1960s.
Dude, I was trying to think, is this the first Apple TV Plus spinoff?
I think so. Yeah.
Am I forgetting something?
Hmm.
I know there was some talk of like maybe they might do a Ted Lasso spinoff or something, but I don't remember this ever happening. So, interesting.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch this one. I when I hear there's enthusiasm about a show like this, I just always think to myself, what am I missing? There's got to be something. Maybe I didn't give it enough time. But there's also another show, another sci-fi show with Lee Pace called
Foundation
that I also thought was just really bad. Like, I probably made it 6 episodes in, and I was like, this show's just bad. Like, I don't like the casting is my problem. Like, I like Lee Pace. I thought he was great. And all the other people in it, I was like, I don't like any of these actors. I feel like they're all miscast. And I don't know what is going on in this show. Like, it felt like there was unnecessary exposition in some of it. And I was like, where are we going with this? Why are you explaining this? It's kind of pointless. And I just kind of gave up on that show because eventually my wife got tired of me complaining about it. She's like, let's just stop watching this. She's like, every
was
time
she
you watch
liking
this,
it?
I think she was like, okay, well, I'll watch it if you want to watch it. But every time we watch it, you just complain. And so why are we even doing this? And I was like, that's a great point. That's a great point. So, but maybe I need to go back and watch. I mean, are you guys, what's it called again? Foundation? Are you guys Foundation fans? Like, did it get good?
I watched the first episode, but it came out right around the same time that the first Dune movie came out, and that just captured my imagination, and I forgot everything that happened in the first episode.
Yeah.
Just completely overshadowed by it.
Yeah.
Every one of these things is like too much, like, 10 episodes of this. It's like, I don't have time to watch 10 1-hour episodes of some, brainiac sci-fi stuff. I had the same thing. Foundation. I think my wife and I watched like 1 episode of it, right? And you get into this like, 2 people have to agree on something. Suddenly you got a nightmare in your hands, right? But and you got to be in the right frame of mind, I think, for those shows. Like I don't think I was in the right frame of mind for Foundation. I've read great things. People talk about how great it is, and you have to be up for it. And I wasn't, I think, when I watched that first episode.
Dude, Lee Pace is such a great actor. He was I had never even seen him before. He was oh wow, he was him too. He was Thranduil is his name. He's like Legolas's dad in the Hobbit movies. He also was in Guardians of the Galaxy. I didn't realize that was him.
As playing Guardians of the Galaxy.
He was Ronan, the bad guy. In Guardians of the Galaxy. Remember the guy, like the blue guy with the big hammer that like to break people's heads open? Trying to steal the stone. Anyway, talk about tangents. We got no time for tangents.
How would you even know who that was?
I don't know. Some people can just tell, But
okay.
I know what I can do. I can hit this button because it's 1:29. I'm not going to be walking out the door right now. All right, everyone, that's all the CultCast we have for you guys this week. But you know what? The party continues on CultCast Off Topic. We'll have a new episode of that coming out probably tonight. No promises, but definitely by this weekend. It will definitely be out then. This has been the CultCast, the best 30-plus minute Apple conversation you're going to hear all week long. New episodes of the CultCast come out every Thursday night. I want to thank everyone for listening and for hanging out live. Thank Hugo Last for those 20 bones. I should send you a picture of, you guys send me a picture of your outing with Mrs. D and El Caney. We'll see you guys. Actually, I don't want that. I take that back. We'll see you guys. Why did I say that? Next time. I definitely don't want that photo. That's something that you can't unsee, Lewis. I already saw Leander Keeney dancing around in his whitey tighties in a hotel room in Las Vegas. I can, if I close my eyes, I can see it now. And it's not something I ever want to see. I bought those little devices that you put in your eyeballs, like keep them open at night, and I just sit there sleeping with my eyeballs like this. I've trained myself to do that. It's a lot of work. All right, everyone. Have a great weekend. Hurtling towards the end.